Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, a literary podcast where we deep dive into the writings of your favorite novels. This spring, we are hosting a book club while we prepare our 10-part literary analysis of Sarah J. Maas's Crown of Midnight. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. And each week we'll discuss one book from our spring book club roster. By using our literary background, we'll provide our flash analysis of each book, as well as discuss listener thoughts.
This week, we're discussing Powerless by Lauren Roberts.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel. The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised. If you're enjoying the podcast, please check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. You can find us at patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk. Hey.
Hi.
We're recording a podcast.
I'm sorry, I had to drink.
That's all right. Do you ever get nervous right before? Like, as I was thinking, I'm like, oh my God, people are going to listen to this.
No.
All right, that's great.
I'm sorry.
In that case, hands up, you go first.
No. Okay. Better than the Hunger Games. Your face.
Oh,
that was not part of my. That was not part of my 10 words. Better than the Hunger Games.
Your face.
A worthy debut novel.
Oh, okay. Mine's 2 sentences. That was YA.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty dark. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Like dark YA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the YA factor really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it was YA until after I finished the book.
Until
and
all of a sudden
I
you're
looked
like,
it up.
why was there no sex?
Kind of. I was like, there wasn't even really a real kiss.
Yeah.
Which was fine. There's a reason for it. We can talk about intention later. But then I looked it up and I was like, it is YA. It hits all the but it doesn't feel like YA.
It does not feel YA. This is giving Hunger Games in the best way possible. Now, when this book came out, it did get a lot of shit for people being like, it's basically Hunger Games. And I hate when people are saying like, it's basically this. And it's like, it's all basically something else.
Yeah, it's all, something else.
It's all something else. Let's just embrace what the uniqueness of this book is. And when I compare something to Hunger Games, I think that was one of the most intellectual YA books of our generation. It had so much thought. It had so much commentary on social hierarchies within the real world and, the manipulation of wealth within the United States, and then a lot of things happening there, right? And Susan Collins is still held to this really high standard and people still flock to her books. It's not really YA. Powerless, it fucks with that.
Yeah, it really does. And it does in a way that I feel is less overt than Suzanne Collins. And that's not a diss to Suzanne Collins.
Yeah.
And it's not a diss to Lauren Roberts. I feel like putting it in this fantastical scene, more fantastical than the Hunger Games were. We've read a lot of magical contest novels before, right? And they didn't feel like the Hunger Games per se. I do fall into the camp of, I think of Hunger Games the second I start reading a contest-based novel, but I'm not actively comparing them. It's just Hunger Games was kind of the first one after Goblet of Fire.
Well, I mean, there were some standout
that I read
for this one that made me think of Hunger Games, though. Like the interview process, getting voted, there was that element. Now, what you're saying is like, this is fantasy, romantasy. The other one, Hunger Games, is dystopian, know? So there is no magic. There is nothing going on there. This is magic. This is a different interpretation of similar themes.
Yeah.
And which is used in the way of a trial. I think what I get walked away with from the comparison of Hunger Games is not more than just the themes, but like the parading yourself around, trying to sell yourself. But again, that's a huge theme that I respect in this book.
I really respect it. Let's preface by saying we listened to this book. We did not physically read this book, and I finished all 3 books this week.
Holy shit.
So I finished the series this
You
week.
okay? How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm great.
That's why you've been driving to work.
Yeah, that's why I've been it's true. It's so true. So it didn't really strike me until now that the elites versus the ordinaries, the extraordinary versus the ordinary, or not extraordinary, could be allegorical to religion versus lack of religion, Christianity versus non-Christianity. And I bring that up also because after I finished this book, I was like, is Lauren Roberts Mormon? That was the other question I had for myself.
Is she? Did you look it up?
She's Christian. I don't know what denomination.
Yeah. Interesting. I always love religious trauma sniffing out other religious trauma. Yeah. I was so caught up on just the wealth disparity. Like, so let's talk about some themes that we saw, right?
Yeah.
One of the themes that I saw was social and economic and wealth disparity issues, right? The way that people throw coins in the fountain to wish for things and how it could feed people. I mean, that's literally the same thing you can say anywhere, right? Like, I know, look at Disneyland, even though they donate it to charity, but they write that off. So is it really a true donation? You know what I mean? That scene where she was like, these coins could go help people. We throw money as signs of wish and good luck. She's just staring at it saying, what the hell? How are you not using this to help others?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, are we more likely to throw a quarter into a fountain than we are to give it to someone in need? Probably.
Yeah. I don't carry cash on me anymore. I don't even get wishes. I think that was one of the best themes in my mind. The other theme that I flagged as I was just kind of like listening to it and wrapping it up, I was like, okay, like, Jac, don't forget this. Did I forget this? No. Okay. It's Amy's laughing. We talked about this.
Sorry.
She doesn't audibly make noises
sometimes
when she laughs.
When I giggle.
I don't know how to describe this in like one word. So like, but I did see this as a theme of a parent could be two things to two different people. One child can have an absolutely abusive, horrific upbringing, while another one can have the best parent in the whole wide world. And you hear that a lot I hear that in documentaries or with people who've had abusive family members, but then one family is like, no, they were so perfect and wonderful. And it's like, well, two things can be true.
Because you're talking specifically about Kai and Kit.
Yeah.
It's also true that abuse takes different forms depending on the child, right?
Yeah.
With Kai, it's physical. With Kit, it's emotional.
Yeah. True.
The other thing that's a huge theme is how much mirroring there is in Kai and Peyton. Their fathers, the way they die, they kill each other's fathers. Spoiler, sorry. There's way more than that, and it continues throughout the series. And I thought that was really, really well done.
Yeah.
And I can't say anymore because it gets even better.
It was a great bookend between discovering that one, like, they both killed each other's fathers. I love that you said spoiler, because at the beginning of almost every single episode, you're like, should we tell people that we spoil the book? And I'm like, this is the whole point of book club, is to have read, to discuss what we read.
Yeah.
Staying true to yourself. I respect it. Yeah. Like, the mirroring aspect is so prevalent, right? Everywhere from their trauma of being forced to do things too young, right? Like Peyton. Yeah. Peyton. She goes by Pay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Peyton, though, she was 13. She was forced to grow up. They talked about Kai being 14 with his first kill.
Yeah.
They were both forced to grow up too young. They were both forced to do things that they didn't want to be a part of. And now they are both at the whims of other people's commands, because Peyton doesn't blink when the other guy tells her, the head of the resistance tells her what to do. Callum. Like, that's another, like, we give Kai, at least me in my mind, was giving Kai shit about, like, you're not doing anything when your father tells you, you're not pushing back. But I was really surprised that Peyton didn't do anything when the other man told her, like, hey, go let them in. Like, she didn't question, she didn't push it. She was just like, yeah, resistance, I'm all in.
Yeah. So I think in that way, authority
Mm,
and like what authority you accept versus resist
yeah.
is a theme
Yeah.
as well. And we see that in multiple characters. It's not just Peyton.
Yeah. I accept no authority. Except every single authority that you put in front of me.
Other themes. I felt
I mean,
like there were more.
there's a bunch more themes. I think those were the main themes that really stuck out for me, though.
Yeah.
That kind of carried me throughout. And we can unpack more as we talk about this, but let's bring the discussion starting off with Peyton. Let's talk about her as a character and how do we feel about her as a FMC, as an FMC who has no gifts, at least at this point that we don't know. Don't tell me. And as an FMC who has faults, but she does recognize them and tries to make amends with herself throughout this this book.
Yeah, I love that this idea of powerless and powerlessness.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton calls it out multiple times that I am powerless. And you can tell that it's an insecurity for her.
Yeah.
I love that she has to rely on her own strength and her ability that she's honed over time, thanks to the training of her father. And I think that's what makes her and Kai equals, is that they both had to become physically more capable than everybody else around them in order to survive. And I think that makes her unique in a world where everybody else has so much magic.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it, but it's kind of putting more concrete thoughts around more mirroring between Peyton and Kai, where Peyton has to rely on her ability. Like, I was also like, psych. This is, I'm like Hunger Games meets fantasy meets psych. I'm on board, pretending to be psychic. But at the same time, it's not like Kai's powers are, I mean, they're useful, but at the same time, he's also, if he hasn't practiced with that power, if he's not familiar with it, it doesn't really do anything, or he's at the whim of that power. So in that sense, they both are having to work harder than others around them.
Yep, absolutely. Especially, and that's true, because in the sense that if Kai is isolated and nobody is in range, and that's something we see in book 2, he's not capable of doing anything, right? His magic is useless. And so they both have to fall back on their physicality to be safe, to protect themselves. I love how observant both of them are. And I love that Kai can't detect how observant Peyton is. It's almost like she's Sherlock Holmes. Like, that's her power. It's purely observation and deduction, which means anybody can do it. She's just happens to be one of the few people who's been like trained and honed to do it well.
I think when it comes to books when you're like with YA, where the characters are so young and you're expecting me to believe that, okay, these young people are in charge of doing so many things and are this powerful. It answers that question, right? Peyton has been training, like you said, since the second she could conceptualize, oh, people have powers and I need to pretend like I do. She's been training for that. When she was 13, she was training to how to steal, right? And through learning how to be scrappy, she can fight. Even though she's a good fighter, she's not like the best fighter in the world. She's just scrappy as hell. And then you have Kai, who, again, I would be like, what, he's 20-ish? But he's the enforcer.
He's only 19, I think.
Is he only a year? Oh yeah, he is a year older, because he was 14 when he killed and she was, okay, so he's 19. Normally I would be like, okay, he's the enforcer, but they go into detail of like, his dad tortured him. His dad forced him to stitch himself back up. His dad forced him to kill who knows how many.
Yeah. There was never a moment where I didn't feel like what Peyton is capable of was not earned.
Yes. Yeah. Same with Kai.
I always believed where Lauren took us with those two characters. And that's a hard thing to do. Like, that's super impressive.
I think it's harder to do with YA, because you are dealing with these really heavy themes, these really heavy subjects. We all have been 18. We've all dealt with 18-year-olds and, if we have any 18-year-old listeners, I've seen the stats, not many, but dumb as hell. Like, you can't expect 18-year-old me to have done that. And to say that someone is that age and has grown up that way, and you're making me believe this, Lauren did a great job of it. But like, you have to make that character and the environment super believable. And we learn about Loot is that the city that she lives in, you know, it's survival of the fittest, and thickest, probably. Thickest wallet.
It is survival of the fittest. And, you know, it's not like Peyton has gotten out unscathed.
Yeah.
She's been whipped. She's been caught. She's been, you know, punished for crimes. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that despite the fact that she does have skills, it still required making mistakes to learn and perfect.
Yeah.
Instead of being, you know, like, ugh, I'm amazing and I've never been caught once. That's not believable.
No, it's not believable at all. Then you have her friend who she ends up becoming family-like. And what's her name? Begins with an A.
Adina.
Adina, thank you. I liked their relationship immediately. I liked their friendship, and pretty early on I was like, when Jax the brother didn't die, I was like, she's gonna die, because someone's gonna die here.
Yeah. Oh, Adina, you know, talk about a character death that it's not a main character, but it still hits.
Yeah.
And it was still, you know, ballsy of Lauren to do.
At first when just the way that they were talking, I was like, are they in love? Did they dabble?
Oh, Peyton and Adina.
Yeah. There was just like there was just a lot of love happening, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm like, oh, okay. Is this a little twist that I wasn't expecting here? But yeah, I think Peyton forgetting Adina and then going back and getting her was such a great moment. One, it's a great writing moment because, you know, it's just kind of hard to have characters to constantly think about everything and then to be like, I'm trying to get them to progress over here. I can't have her hooked over here. So I liked that it was think about ACOTAR, right? Same thing where Feyre was like, wait a minute, I haven't thought about my sisters. And it's kind of like, oh shit, they haven't thought about their life. I need to get them to be traumatized by that. And again, but it worked with the plot, right? Like her guilt is what brought Adina to the castle, which then brings Adina to die.
Yeah. Talk about like not a good choice ultimately resulting in a terrible consequence.
Yeah. As I was reading, I was, you know, I'm like, oh, Amy, I would never forget you. I'd bring you to the castle. And then Adina was dying. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I would forget you. I felt like I did a choose your own adventure and I failed.
That's how choose your own adventure works. Yeah. You think you've made the best choice for the circumstances, but circumstances fucking twist it up for you and you can't predict it.
Yeah. And Peyton, it's just like, choose real names. You and I were at the gym talking about this, where I was like, just say real names. Just say a real name. It's okay. Peyton. I don't even know what's real anymore. I don't even know what's considered a real name. Yeah, I enjoyed her thoroughly. I enjoyed her dynamic with the brothers also.
I did too.
And how much she struggled with the level of manipulation. And I'm going to read some comments because we have some listener thoughts on this book. You know, I'm going to read this one. I'm going to read it right now. Someone said that they felt like the dynamic with Kit was forced. I feel like I believed every second of of her dynamic with both of the guys, because I never felt like she was romantically interested in Kit.
No, I didn't think so either. I felt like she had to give him attention because he's the future king. I felt like she had to give Kit attention because she needed him for the resistance purposes. But also, she doesn't say it, she doesn't think it, but I genuinely think it's also to keep Kai on his toes.
I felt like she genuinely liked Kit. I felt like she thoroughly enjoyed his conversation. I felt like she was surprised that he is so much nicer than his father. I think it was like a way of getting, not to get closer to his father, but it's like, you know, the enemy, like this is the son of her enemy. and she can't even look at him, but then at the same time he's talking and he's like really nice. And I think it's like when you're just dealing with like a really good guy, right, and you just have that guy friend, and it just so happens that they're a hot prince, but you're just like, they're just like a really good guy and you want to spend time with them. But I never felt like she was forcing herself to like him. I felt like she never felt like she should like him. Like there was never a moment of, will they accept me as their queen, or they'll never want me, or how could he be interested in little old me? It was just more of her existing with men and men making those choices around her.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I do agree to an extent. I feel like with Kit and with Peyton comes to the realization, hey, he's a good guy, and I can't assume the sins of the father are therefore the sins of the son, right? So she comes to that realization and is able to overcome her association with Kit, with his father.
Mm-hmm.
What I appreciate is that she's not a pick-me. Instead, she's like, I know I should like be polite, but I'm going to ask these really hard and rude questions because I'm curious.
Yeah.
And it's more important for me to know those answers than for you to like me.
Yeah. I completely agree. There was nothing pick me about the questions that she was asking, right? It's the same way that if I, put me in front of Jeff Bezos, it's like, how can you look at yourself knowing that just a fraction of your wealth, just like the smallest amount of your wealth could feed millions, could help millions of people with their medical debt, could do so much. Like, I understand the concept that it's not ethical to be a billionaire. It's not. Like, there's just too much happening in the world for you to be a billionaire and not find some kind of social responsibility in it. And it's the same way that Peyton has a similar reaction to Kit, right? It's like, how can you exist when these are your people? How can you look at yourself? How can you do you even know what's going on? Do you care? Like, you're a nice guy. So her questions are the same kind of questions that I myself would hope to be able to ask if I met anyone who had that kind of wealth or power.
Yeah. Yeah, because they are not in a situation to ask themselves that because they're too far removed. They should be asking themselves that.
Yeah.
But you need the lowest of the low to be able to confront the highest of the high for those conversations to happen.
You need the lowest of the low, but you need a very pretty lowest of the low, right? You need a very attractive lowest of the low. Like, that's the thing. Where would Kit have even bothered if she wasn't attractive? And one of the small things that Lauren did early on, which I heavily approve, I think it was like the first scene we get with Kit and Kai, is that one of the, like, she ends up being one of the villains, but one of the competitors, she puts like something down, she's working out.
The lavender hair one?
Yeah. And Kai notices that Kit kind of straightens up when she walks over, as if he's kind of like, trying to impress her. To me, immediately, it was, Romeo, you're so fickle. You're with Rosalind and now you're in love with Juliet, right? And I got that sense of, I got what Lauren did. I clocked it and I was like, his love is fickle. His interest is fleeting. He places value on attractive things. And if Peyton wasn't so attractive and so interesting, would he even have this conversation? Because there are two other contestants who are from the slums.
Yeah. And they're not interesting.
No, exactly. So, you can have this conversation and he can be this great and understanding prince, but because she's pretty and he's interested and he's like Romeo and has fleeting feelings.
Yeah, I'm so glad you caught that because I didn't, but it does do a good job of setting the scene that Kit is shallow to some extent. And the fact that Peyton is attractive, was able to save his brother, who's supposed to be the strongest elite that Ilya has ever seen. Of course, Kit is going to pay attention because that is the kind of person he would want to make queen, attractive and strong, because that's what his father has ingrained in him his entire life.
Exactly. And like, Kit's biggest struggle is him not being his brother and going out there and fighting, feeling like his brother's the one who's putting everything at risk and all of that. Where it's like, again, Peyton's like showing him, saying, hey, there's a whole ass village or city here for you to save.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the same things that I've complained about during our Throne of Glass season, where it's like, Dorian has power. You're a prince. You can do things. You can still bring awareness. You can collect the coins to distribute, right? Like, there's still stuff for you to do. But rather than figuring out what it is that you can do in the position that you have, you're busy lamenting that your brother got to go through all the torture, who we know that Kai went to him crying, upset. We know the toll that it takes on him. He knows the toll that it takes on him. He knows the abuse that he went through. And yet you get to go and do all the action.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I think it sets up so well that you don't know is important for later, Kit hyperfixates.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of an obsessive tendency in him, and it's established here, and it's so important for the rest of the journey in this series, which I didn't really appreciate until this conversation. But he's obsessed with the idea of, I want to be as strong as my brother. I want to go do the things my brother is doing. Whereas Kai's probably like, I'm so glad you don't have to do these things.
Yeah, Kai is thrilled that no one else has to do what he's doing. Kai knows what he's doing is wrong, even though he's been so brainwashed that he's just going to go and do things without, ask or question or anything like that. He knows that that's his fate. He's already resigned himself to it, and there's an issue within that. But who Kai is and the way that he recognizes what he's gone through is wrong is what, as someone who hasn't read the series but can make an educated guess, why Kai will come to that realization of, oh, the ordinaries aren't that bad. Maybe I've been in my own head and should make the changes. I can see why he's built more to do that first than Kai. And I can't wait. Yeah, I feel like I've been in such a reading slump. I say that as I've read 2 books this week other than this one, but I feel like I'm in such a slump. I have been, yet I continue. I'll probably keep reading. I definitely will keep reading Powerless, because I just enjoy the dynamic so much of the brothers, and Kit fascinates me.
Luckily for you, I already have both audiobooks.
Yeah.
Actually, and there's a novella in between the first and second book.
Oh, have you read that one?
Yes. So you should do that one first.
Yeah.
It's not as good as the rest of the series. I'm going to be really, really honest. But it's important.
Okay.
There are reasons why you should read it.
Okay. I think what I loved about this book and with Kit is that normally when there's a moment of betrayal, right? When all the resistance members come through the tunnel, and Kit looks at Pei and is like, shit, I know what you did. And there's that moment of, oh my God, I betrayed him. Lauren has done such a good job that I was in the corner going, yeah, betray his ass. Feel like shit. He deserves it. Boo. Normally I get really cringe and I feel really guilty and I'm really bad, but Pei gave him every opportunity to be better. He said, oh, I'm going to change. Oh, I'm going to put the money to better, to the poor. Oh, thank you for showing me. She gave him the opportunity to do better. And other than, wow, this is a really hard world, I should do better, we don't see any change from him.
Right. It's all lip service. And granted, it's all in a very short span of time. So I give it that. However, he really gave me Atlas vibes from Trial of the Sun Queen, where it was all yeah, I will do it. Oh, of course. You're so right. Thank you for educating me. I don't think it was with malintent.
No. I don't think he's a bad kid.
I just don't think he's capable of breaking away from what he thinks his father wants. He's so obsessed with his father.
Yeah. And that's where it comes down to, right? Is he's not going to break away as much as he likes pretty girls. He's not going to break away because his dad has years and years of emotional abuse over him. So, fair points, but it did make the betrayal a lot easier for me reading it, where I was like, you know what? Everyone deserves this. I mean, the only one I feel bad for is Kai. And the way that he's like, what did you do to me? Oh, that killed me.
Yeah, I do love their story, their relationship, which we don't have to go into right now unless we want to. But they both know, or at least at this point, only Kai knows that, I was willing to accept my fate, and you've destroyed that for me, and now I want more.
Can you describe that? Accept his fate as what?
As the enforcer. I've accepted my fate as the enforcer, as the person that kills people.
Yeah.
And
Oh, when he meets her, like,
yeah, when he meets
yeah, yeah.
her and, you know, interacts with her, and then he realizes what she really is at the very end. Like, you've destroyed my ability to be okay with the fate I was given.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's totally his journey. He was nice and numb, right? The love he had is for his brothers and his mom. That's it. Like, that's who he can love. And by being the enforcer, he is protecting all of them, right?
Right.
He is doing everything in service for the few select people that he cares about, nothing more, nothing less. And now you have someone who he does care about. He doesn't want to, but he's, just can't help himself. And I do like their relationship. Let's get into the relationship. I do like their dynamic. Someone in the pros did say that they liked their banter quite a bit. And there's something about their relationship, and I'm trying to put my finger on, and maybe you can help me with this, where the banter, yes, I felt like he was funny. I didn't necessarily think she was funny, but they just make sense. Like, their draw to one another just makes sense. The way that they just can't help to be, they just can't help, right? They keep coming back to each other. Didn't feel entirely forced for me. Like, there were still time, like they were in a forest together for a week, right? Like, there was day and night. They danced in the woods, romantic as hell. But it just themselves, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's in this book, but in future books, Kai says to Peyton that you are my inevitable.
Yeah.
And it really does feel that way with them. And it starts out with, he's charming. He knows he's charming. He can have anyone he wants because he's pretty. But what happens when pretty meets pretty?
Yeah.
It doesn't quite,
Yeah.
You don't have a one up. But she does find him charming. She hates that she finds him charming, and on principle resists him. And just that chemistry is enough to make it believable for me. Of like, I really just don't want to. I just really hate everything about your face and your dimples.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at them.
I think that to each other, they're both almost a paradox to one another. Like,
yeah,
it's everything that they don't expect, right?
Yeah.
Peyton is weak. She does not have an elite power. She should not be a threat. And yet she's the one who saves him. She's the one who brings down a silencer. She's the one who's able to fight. So just that within itself, like, she's everything that he has been taught that is not true, right? Like, wait a minute. I thought my powers and, being a brawny, being all these things was like the most important thing. But here she is, this like weakest of the powers, brought down the silencer. Like, that's incredible. Like, now it's starting to challenge him. And then on the flip side, he is charming and he is confident, and you don't see that in her world, right? Not in Lou. You don't, like, that's really her first experience of someone who is confident and charming and is just, again, a paradox of what she's used to. And then you find out how dark his life really is, similar to life in Lou, in the sense that it's both dark, and yet he continues to be that charming kind of guy, which is contrary to her.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Her assumption is that, and this goes back to the socioeconomic disparity that you were talking about. Her assumption is he's a prince, he's rich.
Yeah.
Of course he's happy. He's got everything he wants. When she finds out how dark his life has been, but he's still able to be kind and charming and take care of her when she's about to die, like he saves her life.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course you're going to start questioning your worldview.
Yeah.
About, or at least your view about this one person.
Yeah. And when he meets her in her territory in Lou, when she is dirty and on the streets and trying to steal from him. Like, he knows that we're talking Aladdin street urchin type level of things, where he wasn't like Kit, who had to be brought to her world to be horrified and couldn't stop coughing and was like, this is where you lived. Kai saw her there and was still interested in her and understands at every point when she feels uncomfortable with food, right? He's there to encourage her to eat, got a food is power moment.
Yeah.
But, but I think it comes also from a place of, he knows where she comes from. He knows where she grew up in and what that means, because he spent time in Loot and he gets what being from there means.
Yeah, you can't be mad at someone who's cognizant of other people.
Yeah.
and that maybe their circumstances don't allow them to enjoy this moment the way other privileged people have.
Yeah.
And adapting to meet them where they're at rather than forcing them to do things that you would rather they do.
I do enjoy them thoroughly, especially since I don't think this is going to be like a fated mate situation, but there is a fated aspect about them. There was like a moment where I was like, okay, so she's going to kill his dad, the king. Like that's coming down to. Like that's going to be hard to get back from. And then we find out that Kit killed her dad. I was like, great.
You mean Kai?
Or Kai. Yeah, we find out Kai killed her dad. I was like, great. They're even.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. We're okay. That's all right.
And it's a great way to, I do feel like recent trends have been, you've got to make the love interest, especially if it gets spicy in book 1, you've got to make the love interest an enemy for book 2 so that you can have the will they, won't they play out again.
Yeah.
And everybody loves an enemies to lovers. Who doesn't? So yes, I some of these twists you see coming, it still was well executed.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise, but it was poetic.
Yeah. And that's what makes it great.
Yeah. I don't need to be shocked that Kai is the one who killed her dad. I thought they did good job of leaving clues. Now, it wasn't one of those things where I predicted, but it was, I mean, I could tell that the king wasn't the one who killed her dad, because why would a king go to the slums to go kill for himself? When the leader of the resistance, when she was like, the king killed my dad, he kind of made a face, and that for a while I thought he killed her dad. So when it came
I did too, actually. I did,
right? I was like, that was the man. And then when it came down to, oh, Kai was the one to do it, I wasn't rocked by it because it made sense. However, it made sense because of good setup and good writing. I don't need to be rocked by things. I need it to be poetic and done well.
Yep. Agreed. And it was done well.
Yeah, it was done well. And it just made me root for her, for Peyton, so much more, because again, as everything is going tits up, and I'm just like, you know what? I want the brothers to suffer. Like, they had every opportunity to accept that ordinaries do not have a disease. There is nothing that, and I could say like, oh, if you had just been honest with them, if you had just said, hey, I'm an ordinary, I didn't feel that way. I did not feel like, maybe they listen if she would just tell them, be honest. Like, my whole thing with books is like, what would happen if people were just honest? And I am a firm believer that if I read a book and people aren't being honest, and I'm just like, it's annoying me. Here's a great example. The movie Ever After? When Danielle is trying to say goodbye to the prince, but she had just been like whipped from her mom and stuff. My method in this, and she's trying to tell him like who she is, but not really, but say goodbye. Show him your back first and then reveal who you are. And then he'll be like, I'll protect you. And it's like, yes, that's exactly it. So my mind's constantly working on how to emotionally manipulate a situation to your best benefit.
Sounds like Jac.
That's, yep. Slytherin. And people are like, millennial cringe. Let us have our joy. Yeah, I think that there was no moment that I could emotionally manipulate in here.
Yeah, there was never a point where I felt like, well, Peyton, if you just tell them you're ordinary, it will all be fine.
Yeah.
Right? They'll all understand, because there is a zealousness to what it means to be elite, what it means to get rid of ordinaries, how you're kind of relegated to the slums if you're mundane.
Yeah.
And I love that there's
hierarchies within.
Yes, exactly. The stratification, because that's very human nature.
Yeah.
You've got to make the top as small as possible.
It's so true. I hate, God, bring it all down. Like, even within this world where being ordinary is the worst thing you can do, being mundane is still arguably just as bad.
Yep.
What, and you get to exist. That's it.
Right. And then there's the defensive elites who aren't as great as the offensive elites.
Yeah.
Like,
and you have the seers, and you have like all the projectors, like the
sights.
The sights. Yeah. I really, let's talk about the magic system. I really enjoyed this magic system. And I also appreciate, like, name them what it is. Name it simple. I sights,
agree.
They see shit. Brawny, they be strong.
Yeah. No, I agree too. I am camp keep it simple.
Yeah.
So I did love that as well. And what's interesting is that they do have electricity. They do have light bulbs.
Yeah.
And still they choose to utilize magic instead of technology.
And
that is because it allows them to continue to encourage stratification. Because if you create technology, you can give people access.
Yeah.
And they don't want to help people have access.
The elite and the power, not just in books, but in society and the world, will hoard control and accessibility for themselves before they will give it over.
Mm-hmm.
Example, like you said here, electricity. That was the same way in the real world too, right? Only the most wealthy had electricity, and then all of a sudden it becomes accessible to everyone. And that's why education is so expensive today too. Make it harder, make it more elite. If you make it available to everyone, then suddenly you're allowing people to have free thought, educated free thought, and then it becomes a whole other issue. And this is such a good example of that. Good catch. Good freaking catch.
I mean, I think that Lauren did an excellent job exploring some really deep themes about humanity and society without being overt about it, with making it still feel like a magical adventure.
Yeah.
Which the next two books feel that way too, which is amazing, but it does continue to be social commentary.
I love a social commentary book. It gets me riled up. It gets me fired. It definitely, where I'm like, burn it all down again. It's my go-to, burn it all down. Just, I mean, if we let me get on my TED Talk. The fact that public education for children is not equal for all kids is bullshit. The fact that's because of where you live and what money your family has and does not have dictates the level of education that you get in a public system. It blows my mind. It blows my mind, because then you want the powerful to be powerful. That's it. Because if everyone has access to food, wealth, and to food, basic amenities, right? Food, shelter, education, then suddenly your control, or the control you think you have, lessens. I'm excited to see what other commentary that she has in her other books.
Some of it's a lot of the same, but in different contexts, but it's still good. But what I enjoy as well that you get to see in future books is how the stratification among the elite is mirrored by the stratification among the poor. Like the poor aren't saints either.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it's, again, survival of the fittest.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Peyton was stealing amongst her own citizens in the area of loot, like or the fact that it starts off with her stealing from the seamstress, and she makes a comment of, I steal from her at least twice a month. You think she'd do better by now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Immediately, she's not a saint, right? Like,
No.
she laughs at the fact of, hey, I got around her and I stole more. And yet in the next page, basically, she describes like, oh, everyone in loot is ends meet, barely surviving. So here she is, barely surviving, stealing from someone else who's also barely surviving. It's a vicious cycle. Like you said, not without her own fault. And it's not like everyone in loot are perfect citizens, but they're also brought to do what they feel like they need to do in order to survive. And, that's not their fault.
Right. And it's also why the king and this system is allowed to continue, because there's no one there to advocate. There's no one there to say it's okay. There's no successful ordinary who is as rich as the rest of the elites who can be a spokesperson, right? Everybody who falls into the class of persecution is just trying to survive.
Yes. I was nervous at one point when the revolutionaries, when they all came in, or the resistance members, they all came in, and then the one head guy had the king, knife to his throat, and he made a threat of like, you listen to us or we're going to come after your princes. And for a moment, I was worried that it was going to go much darker, right? And a la Hunger Games, right? Where we find out that the resistance are just as bad almost as the ones in power. And, I could see that potentially happening in future books, because they definitely kind of laid some breadcrumbs there. But I am also happy that we didn't get full on shit. The resistance is also just as toxic in this scene, in this book, because I needed Peyton to be justified in everything she does for me.
To me, I think the second that Callum says that, the resistance does kind of die for me. I understand Peyton's reasoning for being involved. She
Yeah,
really wants a better world for people like her. Is she naive to think that people wouldn't do whatever needs to be done to make that happen?
Yeah.
Right? She's done whatever needs to be done to survive up until this point.
Yes. I mean, like I said earlier, she doesn't even question him. He's like, hey, by the way, we're the resistance. You steal some keys and get us into the castle. And she's like, bet. Give me a minute. I'll get us there. There's no frontal lobe development to question that moment. The resistance does die there because you can see that there are clues and moments of her being able to, like it's messy.
Yeah.
I still am happy because I can see that that's going to be probably a larger theme in books to come, that like the resistance is also messy and that she needs to go in there. But I'm happy that that wasn't a huge plot moment in this book because she needs to be consumed with her betrayal of the princes and not the idea of, oh my God, I've been betrayed too.
Yeah, and her best friend just died.
I know.
The only family she's had for the past 5 years was just brutally murdered right in front of her by someone she already hates.
Yeah.
Like, there are more important things going on right now.
Yeah. I did appreciate as like the scene was playing out and Peyton's trying to run away, and then all of a sudden there's a figure in the road and it's the king, and he just kind of happened to be there. I just got a moment. I was like, you know what? I respect that, Lauren. Don't explain it to me. Like, don't explain how he got there. I don't need it. I'm here with you.
Yep. Like, sometimes fate just works in mysterious ways, and I'm just going to take it.
Sometimes shit's convenient.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
That was a moment of shit was convenient. I'm okay.
That's called a good day.
Or a bad day, because she almost died also.
Yeah, true.
They could go either way. All right, I think it's time for some comments.
Sure. Let me take a sip.
Yeah, me too. One listener had so many feelings about this book that they sent me their Goodreads review screenshots.
Oh, wow. So a lot of people liked Kai. Let's see. My favorite comment so far. Where is it? Damn it. I missed it.
Is it love a bad boy who's with golden retriever energy?
Yes. Domineering man with golden retriever energy.
That
was probably my favorite. Yeah.
That was funny. And it's true. He is such a golden retriever. He's a golden retriever stuck in a Doberman's body.
It's so true. I do. And a lot of other people appreciated something we already said too, which is I like that Peyton doesn't have powers.
Yeah. I like that their romantic relationship doesn't really pop off in this book.
Which I think is necessary. So let's talk about that intentionality.
Yeah.
They don't really share a kiss or really express affection.
Yeah.
Until the truth is laid bare that she is an ordinary and Kai killed her father. And if they had kissed, if they had spoken like intention or affection, the relationship would have then died. But because there was no relationship, it could not die.
Ooh, so, Amy, wow.
It also comes down to consent, right? Can you consent if you don't actually know?
Yeah. And I mean, and that would be Peyton on this time who would be withholding the ability for consent. I like it because I feel like romance is just nowhere near Peyton's head. I think that she's enjoying talking to these two men, and whether she wants to admit it or not, like she's enjoying talking to them. We do know that Peyton kind of manipulates Kit, charms him a little bit, tries to get him to drop his guard a little bit more. So there's that element there, but she genuinely enjoys their company. And it just, even though there's that romantic element, it did not, like, this wasn't the book for it. Like, her journey was definitely her own journey of trying to survive. And what does it mean to survive as an ordinary in this world, and having to deal with men, these two men who represent everything she hates, right? The king, and then having to come to terms that they are not the king, and that there might be hope coming about this in a different way. Like, Peyton didn't even entertain the idea of, hey, maybe if I talk to Kit, like, what if we don't bombard the castle? What if I charm this man until I, get him to understand and see reason? Yeah. But, I feel like her journey is just so elsewhere that the romance was very secondary to me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also would say that with Peyton and the way her life has gone, is she even capable of loving more than one person at a time?
Whew. No.
I genuinely don't think she is.
Yeah.
You know, it was her father only,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was Adina only.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's
Adina
a vacancy.
now there's a vacancy. Adina had to die.
Yeah.
In order for Peyton to have capacity.
Yeah.
Because survival and one love is already too much. I mean, she forgot Adina.
Survival means one other person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she needed Adina to survive, and Adina needed her to survive. Survival equals one partnership at a time. And she was just trying to survive these games, which is why she partnered with Kai when she needed to. You know, she knew how to partner with people one person at a time, but you're right. She very much is like, I can only handle this much.
Yeah.
And this much is all I can deal with right now. And anyone else can step away. She never promised anything to these guys. Nope. You know, like, that's my thing, is that she never promised anything to Kit. She charmed him. That's on him. You know, like, that's his fault.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, for both men, maybe less Kai than Kit, but they both come to expect something from the pretty girl who's nice to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in Kai's bedroom, she walks away. She opens her mouth as if to say something, and she chooses, like, nope, I can't engage anymore. And then Kai is the one who kind of throws a temper tantrum at the ball and, you know, drinks too much and doesn't want to, like, and dances with all the other women. And it reminds me of, I think we should just, okay, I'm going to say two things. One, we should celebrate more women manipulating men. Or just existing. And, you know, it's men's fault.
Men reading too much into a woman existing.
Do you know the name? I'm not going to say it correctly, but like Coach Bill Belichick or something like that. He's one of the football coaches, I think, for one of the universities. He's a really big deal in the football world and the ESPN world. He's an old white man. Turns out his girlfriend is, I think she's like 25, 26, but they've been dating for a while. There was an interview.
That's even more sketch.
I support her, because now people are like, I think she's manipulating him and is using him for his money. Good.
He's the one who probably used his money to attract her.
Yeah. And if a woman turns it, Una reverses it and is the one in charge, because there was an interview that he was doing. And in the interview, it was like mentioned that the interviewer wasn't allowed to really bring up anything to do with how they met. And then the interviewer brings up with how they met. And she comes out from behind and was like, we will not be answering that. And then Bill was like, I can't answer that. Like, I'm sorry. And I'm just like, you know what? Fucking do it. And then people are like, it's so weird, out of these several years that she's been with him, she now has an $8 million real estate portfolio. Girl, get it. Should we do a welfare check to see if he's okay? No.
If he's showing up to games, he's fine. He's
whipped. He found a woman who can just put him in his place. And I kind of feel that way. Not that like Peyton did that, right? There's nothing here that she's doing. There's no maliciousness from other than Peyton trying to get the keys and let the people in, right?
Right.
But it's just what happens when two guys feel like they have chemistry with a woman.
And feel entitled to her time.
Yes.
And create their own false narratives and expectations when nothing has been verbally promised or said.
She hasn't done anything.
Men put themselves in those situations.
And no one more so than Kit. Because at least with Kai, there was mutual chemistry there.
Right.
But he still was guilty of, I'm so into her, and she has done nothing. Like, she tried to kill him. She tried to stab him a couple times.
How many times has she held a dagger to his throat?
Right?
Many.
And then, like, when they're doing their sexy arrows and they're, you know, he's the one who started feeling her up. And what does she do? She barely touches him.
Yeah. I loved that contrast.
Yes.
Of just like one finger barely touching him.
Yes.
Whereas like he had his hand on her stomach and on her arms and whatnot.
But like, isn't that just such a great metaphor for what is life, that men feel like they have to make these more overt moves, these more louder, bolder things, and that's what it means. And a woman can just literally touch you with just a single finger, and suddenly it's like, this is so intense. This is the hottest thing anyone's ever done. Right? Like, it's just very telling of, that's another theme and another commentary that I feel like this book does. Whether that was Lauren's intention, I don't know, but that's what I see heavily is it, you're getting a lot of the Vampire Diaries, Stefan Damon love triangle in here, but it's totally, yeah, just two guys who feel entitled to her time.
Yeah. So let's talk about the descriptor of love triangle. I didn't feel like it was trying to be a love triangle.
I mean, neither did I with Damon and Stefan. There was only Damon for me, but I really wish you had watched Vampire Diaries.
I watched like the first season.
There's so much more. So much more for you to watch. I think that some of the people's negatives was the love triangle. And I agree. I don't think it was a love triangle. I think it was two men who felt entitled to her time, only one she actually liked.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, but let's also look at it from a power dynamic, not just a gender dynamic, right? Because that has its own power dynamics, but royals.
Yeah.
And a slummer.
Yes.
You really think she can say no to either prince?
No.
Right? I mean, she's going to try, but at the end of the day, she's participating in this competition. She wants to survive. Submitting herself to the whim of princes is part of the survival.
Let's talk about how she meets Kit. Outside her bedroom. He was standing outside her bedroom. What is, I don't like the idea of a random man outside my bedroom standing out there waiting for me. Like, that's creepy as hell. Now, you could argue maybe he was there to see his brother, but like, they was close enough for her to run into him. That's too close. And that itself is a threatening aspect of man outside your bedroom. Now, then she realizes quickly, shit, that's not the man, that's the prince. Anything she does, like, he could do anything and she's at his whim.
Right. And she's just barely made it into the castle at that point. She's barely touched what she has lacked for the last 5 years, which is security.
Yep.
And it's a false security, but it's security for a certain amount of time. To piss off the princes to risk that security all over again. She's not going to do that. She needs to eat.
She wasn't allowed to not look him in the eye before he starts complaining about that. Before he starts being like, well, why won't you look me in the eye? Like, why does she have to? Why does she owe you her eyes? Why does she have to do anything? Because you are the prince and you get to tell her what to do, and you can be as sweet and as charming and as like, I'm just a nice guy. That's what Kai is. He is that quote unquote nice guy. And he is meant to, I think at the very end in the epilogue, he says, I was meant to be the nicest king in history. And it's like, this is the epitome. That's another fucking thing we're going to get into, is the nice guy concept, the nice guy trope. Well, he was just a nice guy. Nice men assume things. Nice men assume your time. Nice men assume that because they're so nice and because they're being nice to you, well, why wouldn't you love them? Why wouldn't you want them? He's a man of power. He's a man who's attractive. He's a man who's nice. So you owe your affection to me.
Right. Because he's going to be the next king. He obviously is a catch. Everyone should want him.
And not once did he think about, let's say hypothetically, she was attracted to him, or she felt like she did owe it to him, and there was some kind of romantic relationship that was picked up from there. What is her future? There is none, right?
Right.
There's no hope for her to be with him and be the next queen. Like, his dad wouldn't allow it. Like, I think he knows his father well enough to know that's not an option. So why should she entertain any of this if not for his own romantic whimsy?
Right. And well, and that's true for Kai as well, by the way.
Absolutely.
And she's attracted to him.
Yep.
There is no future. If she even lives through the trials.
Yes. She's going back to the slums.
She's going back to the slums. Even if she hadn't killed the king, if Adina hadn't died, like, if the tragedy of the final trial didn't happen and she managed to survive it, she'd go back to living in a garbage fort in an alley.
That's so sad, but it's true. That's just the way that you describe it, but it's true. It's a garbage fort. Yeah.
And Kai would come and pester her every now and then, and she wouldn't give him the time of day because there's no future.
And she never entertains a future with either of them. That's why she doesn't entertain a present. Now, she can't fight her attraction to Kai, but there is the lack of conversation and the lack of mental narrative, to me, shows an understanding of the lack of reality of either relationship.
Right. If she really thought there was a chance, the narrative would tell us that.
Yes. And she never entertains it. Like yes, she's attracted to Kai, but she never entertains even remotely being with either one. And the lack thereof is significant.
That's why I don't think it's a love triangle.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to read someone's Goodreads that they sent us. It's a little long, so. Oh my god, this was so boring. Love me a good magical trial type book, but this was not successfully done one. The trials somehow managed to be boring. There was barely any content to any trials. They were glossed over and then always ended with just and fight. All the interactions between Peyton and Kai were copy/paste over and over again and didn't add any content, character building, or otherwise. So many scenes were replayed over and over again, and the banter was not bantering. It was stupid. The conversation about blueberries almost DNF'd it right there. Pacing. Do I want to talk about that before I keep reading about their other stuff? Or do I read the whole thing and then we
read the whole thing? I have many thoughts. I'll try to write them down while you go.
We could take pause. Take a pause.
So let's talk about the trials first.
Yes.
I didn't care about the trials, and I didn't care that it was glossed over and that we didn't get a lot of details because I'm not there for the trials. I'm there for the characters. I'm there for the character journey. So for me personally, okay, whatever. I mean, and that's just me. And part of it is because if I had to figure out trials, which unfortunately I'm thinking about a book with trials right now, I don't know that I could do any better.
I think that Lauren glossed over them in a very specific and intentional way. If it's specific and intentional, then why? The question then becomes why. Is it because it's just not in her wheelhouse and she's not good at doing it, or is there kind of other reasons behind it? I don't know when this listener read this book. I know when this book came out, there was a lot of hype behind it of Hunger Games meets ACOTAR, or, like one of those, like Hunger Games meets blah, blah, blah. And I know a lot of people went into this expecting Hunger Games. So I don't want to imagine that was her expectation was Hunger Games. I think you and I with this book club, we've been reading a lot of trials in a lot of different, in a short amount of time. A lot of trials happening in our books.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a bunch of tastes of different trials. But like you said, the trials this book wasn't about the trials. The book was about the social commentary. And the trials highlighted the social commentary that it needed to, right?
Right. The other aspect I would say is the trials were crafted purely so that Kai could win.
Yes.
And so what do we see? We see things that Kai has already done before.
Not just Kai would win, but Kai could be abused in the same time because he doesn't like heights.
Yeah.
He can't do these, what happens when his powers are removed. I think that you have these 3 trials and it all ends with, okay, now fight. Yeah, that's fair. Kind of, how are you supposed to end a trial? And Lauren chose and fight. That's a valid thing. If you're not a fan of that, that's totally valid. Yeah, each trial was crafted to both challenge Kai and make sure he wins.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I will say that did bother me as I was reading, both in the trials and just interactions in general, the one thing I kept thinking in book 1 was, why is no one interrupting Kai and Peyton? They get a lot of time.
Yeah.
And nobody interrupts, nobody comments on it. Like, it's not until much later in the novel that the king is like, you can't do that. Right?
Yeah.
There were definitely times where I'm like, this feels like this is the time to interrupt this conversation.
You know how I feel about conversations where they're like, and I opened my mouth to say something and then it ends up being taken away, that moment. I agree. I think that there were definitely moments that the king would have interrupted. Like, why did the king let things get between both his sons, right? Not just one, both of them. Why did he let it go on that long?
Yeah.
I would have liked, if there was a reason, I would have liked that to have been said at the end. Like, would have liked maybe in Kai's point of view, the king would have been like, can you just please fuck her and get it over with type thing. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe the king revealed that if I let my sons get close to you, I'd get closer to the resistance. You know what I mean? Like something, but I agree. Like, why would this powerful king who knows that she's ordinary let her be near his sons for so long?
Right. It does get explained in book 3. I will say that.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that. All right. I'm going to continue reading their Goodreads. Pacing, people, pacing. These romantasy authors need some new editors. We didn't even get to the meat of the main storylines, i.e., the resistance, and whatnot until 75% in, which can be fine, but you better have me very entertained up until that point. I was not. I have also heard critiques that this heavily borrowed. Let's talk pacing. I feel like they're making a lot of good points, and I don't want to be like, and I disagree to every single one, because like, everyone's interpretation and understand, like, their feelings to each book is their own and entirely valid.
Right.
I think that it's fair to say that the whole thing with the resistance didn't happen until much later in the book. It kind of reminds me a little bit of our discussion with Quicksilver of why is it that this thing, which would be a plot thing, happened a lot farther than I would expect. So I think that's a very valid question to bring up when you talk about a classical structure of a book.
I can see that. I guess I don't have strong feelings, but if I were an editor, I would also say, if we want the failure of the resistance to hit harder, we need to be with them longer.
I agree.
We need to care about them more, and that requires time.
I agree. The resistance failing and everyone dying didn't do anything for me other than cause chaos. And if the goal was just to cause chaos, but I don't really care about the people who died, you did it. If you want us to die, if you want us to care, then absolutely, like what you said, they need to move that up sooner. All right, continue. I also heard critiques that this heavily borrowed from other big fantasy/romantasy books, and I'm not usually in favor of thinking like that. There's only so many tropes and so many ways to tell a story, and usually I'm cool with it, but OMG, this was pretty bad. And again, somehow the trials were borrowed from other series, ended up boring. First trial, Hunger Games. Second, not sure, but it's out there. Third, Goblet of Fire. If you want an example of a well-paced magical trials type romantasy book, then go to The Serpent and Wings of Nights. The trials were creative, the stakes were high. I was on edge of my seat the whole time, and there was no waste of space.
I mean, Serpent and the Wings of Night is just exceptional.
Serpent and the Wings of Nights was about the trials.
Yeah, it was about the trials. The trials were the whole point.
Yeah. And like you and I said, these trials never felt like the whole point. It was the themes that were more heavily involved, because you also don't get those heavy themes happening in Serpent and the Wings of Night.
Exactly. If the trials were the point, there would be more of them.
Yeah.
And they would be more intense, which, if that's what you want, you're entitled to that.
Absolutely.
I loved the trials in Serpent and the Wings of Night. I don't love the trials in Powerless, but I didn't need to love the trials in Powerless. I needed to love Kai and Peyton and their interactions.
Yeah. And I mean, the last one definitely was giving me Goblet of Fire vibes, but
so was the end of Quicksilver.
Was it?
There's a maze.
Same thing. It was a maze. Yeah. It was it's hard. It's hard when things are done. Like, it's not like they had one of the big things with Goblet of Fire is that there were different tasks within the maze that people the movies forget about, where it's like, there was a riddle that he had to solve. There was other things happening within the maze, that it wasn't just a maze and them running around. So, but like you said, Quicksilver, that's a maze. It's mazes exist, and I don't think that there was enough difference for me, for the Harry Potter comparison, for the Hunger Games comparison, for me to be okay with it, me personally.
So let me speak in favor of this Goodreads.
Yeah.
If you don't believe Peyton and her character, if you don't believe Kai and his journey, if you don't believe the chemistry that they have, and you're not interested in the interactions they have, does the book have anything else going for it?
Then no. Yeah.
No, these two, and that's what makes it romantasy. These two are necessary to ground us, to care about the socioeconomic commentary, and to be okay with the world that Lauren Roberts has shaped.
Yes.
And to, tolerate the trials.
Yeah, that's a totally fair point. If they don't suck you in, then none of it else is going to.
And none of it matters.
Yeah. Then the trials don't matter to me. I was like, whatever, that's
it's just a thing.
Yeah, go dance in the forest again, that's fine.
I actually appreciated that the trials were not the focus. Because I liked the characters. I wanted their journey.
I like that there was a ball before each trial.
I did too.
Different dresses. We got different dramas. We got different things happening each time. I was thrilled with that. I personally was so much more hooked on the social commentary. Everything else was a breeze for me, but like you said, I think you said it extremely well. If the characters did not bring you in, then none of it was going to. Then there's nothing else that would.
Yep.
Someone else says that the ending felt too rushed, like Game of Thrones season finale. I have been noticing a lot more fantasy books doing this where there is no beat after. And I don't know if that's a trend. I don't know what's going on, but a lot more fantasy books are just like,
there's a lack of resolution.
Yeah, it just ends
Yeah.
at a like boom. And I caught that too. And I don't know how I feel about it because even in my own book, I'm having a fucking resolution, like at the end. Like I personally prefer a Harry, Hermione, and Ron going to the train at the end of the year saying goodbye,
Yeah. I do think, I don't know if it's strictly a romantasy thing, especially when the book is part of a, start of a trilogy or the second book. I think there is a fear because the romantasy genre is becoming so much bigger that people won't wait for the next book, won't come back for the next book, won't be excited.
Yeah.
And so the cliffhanger, I mean, think about Kate Golden. I love her, but her books she ended each of her books with a cliffhanger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just think that's what a lot of books are doing right now.
And for me personally, my criticism to the modern style of ending on a cliffhanger, you can still end on a cliffhanger and you can still have resolution. I'm only referencing Harry Potter because I feel like it's a very universal book. And, as much as we disdain J.K. Rowling, she has no home here. She did a great job with the series. And let's look at, spoiler, Dumbledore dies. That was a huge cliffhanger. Yeah. That was a huge cliffhanger. And we got that resolution. At the end of every book, you still had some major cliffhangers. And, Cedric died, Voldemort's back. Yeah. Sirius died, the order, has begun. Like all these things have happened, and you still have that 2 chapters to make that resolution. I think that's more classically like a classic book, right? Like that's a very classical structure. I think that's been the move has been away from that in the style and the trends. I personally don't care for that. I like that 2 chapter resolution.
That's fair.
Expect that in my shit. Okay, so this is the book that people were saying that was Powerless and Red Queen. You and I never read Red Queen. Red Queen is by Victoria Aveyard. And I remember when Powerless came out, a couple people messaged us and was like, what are your thoughts on Powerless plagiarizing Red Queen? And I was like, damn, that's a heavy word.
Yeah.
I've never read both, so I have no opinion. And at this point, you and I have not read Red Queen. Maybe we should do that sometime. Let's see. Powerless I'm looking at a Reddit thread. Plagiarized Red Queen. Lauren Roberts plagiarized the entirety of Red Queen. The perfect quote to describe this book. Your manuscript is both good and original, but the part that is good is not original, and the part that is not original is not good. From this world build, and that's from Dr. Samuel Johnson. They quoted someone. From the world building to the scenes to the character traits, she didn't miss a thing. I got so angry while reading this book. 80% of this book was written by Aveyard and 20% was stolen by Susan Collins. Let's see. Okay, I'll give you the book description. You tell me if it's Red Queen or Powerless. Poor girl is a thief for a living. She has a sister that is the seamstress. Poor girl meets one of the princes by stealing coins from their pocket. She thought he was a normal guy, but found out later who he was. After a very public event witnessed by many people, poor girl from the slums is invited to live in a castle. There are two prince brothers. One is heir, the other is the spare. They're both pining for her. Both brothers have different mothers, but from the same father. While at the castle, they also train her to fight along with the princes. One brother asks her to the ball, while the other brother, the one she stole from, whisks her away from the middle of the night for a private dance to teach her how to dance with the brother. Girl decides to join a rebel organization while living in the castle. The rebel organization is led by people who don't have any magical abilities as a way to tackle the oppressive monarch. I mean, I can keep going, but there's a mean girl, but apparently that's like both books. Let's see, towards the end of the book, the main character is stuck in an arena fighting for her life. The rebel organization bombs this as well, thus giving her the ability to escape the castle and escape the arrest of working with said rebel organization. The main character is also exposed for being red/ordinary.
So I don't know. I haven't read Red Queen, and the thing with any art and any story, and we've talked about this before, there's only so many stories to tell.
Yeah.
Now, did did Lauren Roberts read The Red Queen and say, I want to pay homage to Red Queen with my own story and my own characters?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Did she ever read what Red Queen? Maybe not. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, until you and I have read Red Queen and we can have, like, I don't know, a more educated opinion on it, I do get very stuck on like this, like, I feel like plagiarism is such a stern term, and maybe because you and I have been scared shitless of the term plagiarism, where it's like we come from the world of academia, and if you plagiarize, you are like expelled, basically. You are done for.
Yeah, and the use of the word plagiarized is incorrect,
Yes.
right? In this context, the plagiarism is to copy word for word. Now, if she literally stole Victoria Aveyard's manuscript and tried to pass it off as her own with different, like, just
if the same conversations were happening,
right? Control, find, replace names with this name, that would be a different conversation. But to hit the same beats with the same scaffolding doesn't necessarily necessitate plagiarism if they accomplish different things. And I don't know. I haven't read Red Queen.
I don't know. Does Red Queen have the same social commentary as Powerless? Because Powerless has, this book is about social commentary. This book is not about the romance. This book is not about anything else other than social commentary to me. I can't tell you about Red Queen. I haven't read it. I haven't had any specific experience. Now, both sound similar, but again, let's play this game of girl, heroine lead, male lead, female lead, doesn't know that they're special or chosen, finds out they're special and chosen, introduce Shadow Daddy, literally when we were talking about Quicksilver, we were like, oh, well, here's the nightmare that she wakes him up from, except it's not a nightmare, it's the Quicksilver. Or, here's this moment that's happening. I think romantasy is so incest, it's so incestual, that it's kind of hard not for there to be those similar beats, especially if you're hitting tropes, especially if both are YA. I think that ends up being really hard that both are YA. And then you have the fact that Hunger Games is a perfect masterpiece. That's something else. It's social commentary mixed with trials that does both extremely well. It's about the trials. It's about the social commentary. It is a different beast. However, it is also dystopian. You don't have a fantasy element that you're dealing with. So things are different there.
I reserve judgment until I read The Red Queen. Yeah. If I read The Red Queen.
Maybe we'll do it for next book club or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Amy doesn't look thrilled.
We just are around Victoria Aveyard too much.
We are. Okay. I don't think people understand the lore of this, and I will include this. We have been living our life next to Victoria for a long time now.
Yeah.
A solid 6 months. We go to the same events. We hang out with the same people. We're in the same literal dinner group with her and other people. And yet
we never interact.
We've never interacted with her once. It's the weirdest thing. Who knows? Sure, she's lovely. Sitting across from her, standing across from her has been lovely. I mean, that happened just the other weekend when we were we were at the book fair, and you were just like, oh, by the way, there's Victoria. And I'm like, what, again?
Oh man,
who was not even, oh, by the way, there's Victoria across the way. There's Victoria
who's across the table from me,
who's talking to the person who's sitting next to us.
Yeah,
I know. I don't know if it'd be messy if we covered her or not, because I
feel like it would.
Yeah, we're too intertwined with her, even though she has no idea who we are.
Yeah, that's fine. We can keep it that way.
As if us doing a podcast episode on her would change that. Watch, that's the thing that blows us up.
Oh no.
Also, we get super viral for that episode. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Happy Hermit Lily, when she was talking about SJM in the third Crescent City book. She said to herself, what is it that the author was SJM trying to accomplish? Did they accomplish it? And I really feel like those are words I'm trying to live by.
Yeah.
There's a difference in the way that you and I are talking about books this season than we have in past seasons. And that's because we're trying to do better of what are the themes? What are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I look at the themes, I feel like Lauren Roberts accomplishes it.
Agreed. Now, who the hell knows if those were what she was trying to accomplish or not, but that's what we see and that's what we feel like is done. Yeah.
There's not a theme I would pinpoint that I would say that didn't really land. that I can think of, at least.
I mean, maybe if someone was looking for romance in this book, they could say that didn't land. Let me look up the things people didn't like. Keep going.
The other thing I will say is that I don't think Powerless is as good as Reckless and Fearless for different reasons.
Oh, you think the other two books are better?
Yes. I think that Lauren Roberts evolves because Powerless is her debut novel. I also will say, from a prose standpoint, I can tell this is YA because it says too many things.
That's one of the things people in the comments have been saying quite a bit, is the simplicity and the prose that they're not a fan of.
It's not that it's too simple. It's that she explains too much. So, for example, something will happen and then Peyton will summarize how that makes her feel. But I don't need Peyton to tell me how she feels because I can already tell through the narrative.
And if that's YA or if that's because this is Lauren's first book, I don't know. But it is a fair critique to have.
She does it in the other two books.
All right, well, then that's a critique to have.
Yeah.
That's a style. That's a
style thing, and I don't think it's necessary. But I will also say the same thing about SJM, right? Yeah. She was better about leaving things unsaid in A Court of Thorns and Roses than she was in Crescent City.
She said too many things in Crescent City. Too many words were said in Crescent City. Yeah, a lot of people felt like it was ChatGPT wrote YA book tropes.
That makes me sad.
People are really hating on this book. The over stabby FMC. I do get over a very stabby FMC of like, I think I mentioned this before in previous seasons where it's like, I'm a stabby woman and I do stabby things and stab. So you do have a very classic stabby FMC, but
I guess it didn't bother me. I felt like it was true to her character and true to her circumstance.
Yeah.
I think, again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. If you don't love the characters,
yes,
you're not going to love this book. Yeah. I feel like I really love how tortured Kai is throughout all three novels. He is a tortured soul. It only gets more intense, and I hurt for him, and I love it.
Yeah.
I just do.
I love Peyton because I want to speak to billionaires and men, let's be real, in power, in these power positions, who even in our government and in today, that I want to be like, look me in the eye and tell me that you are supposed to be a Christian individual who believes in love and compassion and yet are choosing all these things that hurt people daily. How can you believe that? So for me, I love Peyton because I'm riled up and I feel like she does what I wish I could do.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other, going back to the allegory aspect of this. I don't know if Red Queen is an allegory for religion. I feel like this is an allegory for religion.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? I know it sounds like we were wrapping up, but it was such an interesting thing that you said.
So if you look at the elite society, in my mind, it is equivalent to organized religion. And it's equivalent in the sense of, and this is not all religion. This is not all religious people.
Yeah.
You know, take that with a grain of salt. It's really about the group of religious people who believe only they will be saved. Only they are the only good ones.
Yep.
Only they know the truth.
Yeah.
Only they deserve goodness, and how they treat other people around them, and don't emulate the morals that they tout.
Yeah.
That is the elite society versus the ordinaries.
Yes.
That are the zealots versus the rest of the world. It really wraps up really nicely in the third book, in the epilogue, because one thing you will notice in this series is that there are times when people die, you get their perspective after death.
Oh. Oof.
And so in the epilogue of the third book, you get a character's perspective after death.
Wow.
And how this isn't what they were promised. This isn't what they were told. But they thought they were good.
Oh, that is totally an allegory.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you can see.
Yeah.
Like, that's when it hit me of like, oh, this is about religious fervor versus living by the morals that you preach.
Thinking that they're blessed because they're chosen and they're in this position because God has blessed them. I mean, that's the same thing where the head of England, you know, they consider them the head of the church, Queen Elizabeth, King Charles, and everyone past is like, oh, well, you're there because God placed you. You're there because God saw it fit. I mean, whether remove God and say plague.
Right.
I mean, exactly. And you have the fact that they said,
thank by the plague.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say thank the plague, buy the plague.
Yeah. Replace God with plague, and you have the plague now deciding who is blessed and who is not. Ooh, chills. So does Red Queen do that? I don't know.
I have
But
no
what
idea.
I can tell you is that Hunger Games does not. What I can tell you is that Hunger Games doesn't do that. What I can say is that the Goblet of Fire does not have that moment. I mean, kind of, Jesus comes back in the form of Voldemort if you want to get into it. But that's also not Jesus. I don't know. That's more of like a Nazi Hitler situation over there. That's what this book brings.
Yeah.
I cannot speak to Red Queen. I cannot speak to other things, but I can speak to Hunger Games. I can, even though I haven't done analysis on it, I can tell you that I don't see a lot of religious, from what I remember, the same thing that's here. But maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I love a book that you do it again. Like, I think that this book is hitting themes of things that are necessary. If I'm willing to read my 15 million mafia romance, I'm willing to read another book about saying, hey, fuck society.
Yeah. Trials. And, we read the same things over and over again.
Yeah. And
we still enjoy it.
It's funny because you're like, trials. And I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about the trials. I was thinking about the fuck society. Fuck this elitism. Fuck this wealth disparity. Like, yeah. I want more of that. I want the next generation of readers reading that. I want that shoved down their throats so fucking hard that the men of Gen Z stop fucking voting for these oppressors.
I highly encourage reading the next two books because you see a process of disillusionment. You see a process of it's very good.
Okay. I don't have a book to listen to because the next book we're doing is Bargain with a Vampire, and we're reading. That's gonna be the first book we've read for book club.
I know. I'm starting to listen to Crown of Midnight.
Just something to listen to, just to get by. Yeah. I think that'll be once I get through Powerless, I might start Crown of Midnight so I can remember anything from that.
I think that's a good idea. I started listening to it on Libby so that you could listen to it on
Oh my god, thank you. Let's
Audible.
Be real. I mean, now that you've hyped up Powerless and the other two books, I'm gonna get through those and then do Crown of Midnight, which I will regret doing in this order.
Probably.
Live, laugh, love.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be discussing The Vampire's Bargain by Jasmine Walt.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. If you'd like to submit your take on any of the books we plan to discuss later this spring, please be sure to follow us on Instagram, where we ask for listener submissions.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle BookTalk for Book Talk. Bye.